Hi everybody, this is Toffee bringing you part 3 of my Fire Emblem 12 Maniac Mode 100% growth LTC. Chapter 9 is the first true desert map, though there are several clear paths for other units to use. We have 2 recruitable characters and some important side objectives to grab. We start off by promoting Militia. This is not strictly necessary, but it streamlines the particular strategy we'll be using. We also promote Pala, who will actually have faster EXP gain now since promoted level 1 units effectively count as level 16 for EXP purposes. The actual Chapter 9 clear I'll be showing off is fairly standard, but it is still the site of a couple of discoveries. Marth needs to recruit Etzel, who starts in the top left, and visit the village in the top right to recruit Minerva. If you count squares, it should theoretically be possible to finish this map in 3 turns with 2 rescue uses with both of them recruited, but Etzel's AI doesn't quite cooperate to make this happen. I'll have some more detailed notes in the description, but this means that under full recruitment, Chapter 9 can be cleared in 5 turns with 1 rescue use, 4 turns with 2 rescue uses, or 3 turns with 3 rescue uses. This map once more has quite a few thieves with droppable treasure for us to pick off. Katria grabs her promotion item there. Chris gets the Thief Staff, which is an E-rank staff that can be used to grab the contents of any treasure chest that doesn't have enemies standing on it. It'll be very important in this run for grabbing several mobility staves from faraway treasure chests, especially given that we did not get our hands on a master key until very late into the run. Wendell is here to squeeze in 3 heals to reach C staves as a bishop. And Julian heads to the bottom right to grab a couple of very important treasure chests. Outside of the thieves, the enemies on this map are mostly Draconites and magic users who are unimpeded in the desert. Lynn's relatively early promotion did hamper her stats a bit, so she doesn't just double and one-run the dracos yet. Katria hits level 18 there and is now ready to promote. On turn 2, we get in range of the enemy mages. All of them and Etzel have a linked AI where they start charging simultaneously if any of them are aggroed. You may by now have noticed that Militia is heading towards the village with a 2-use rescue staff, while Marth is staying in the bottom left, and be concerned as to what is going on. Marth certainly gets to feast on the large Draco-shaped EXP bags, but those who have played this game before know that there is another desert chapter, and so if I were to rescue Marth to Minerva's village and then back to Seas, surely that chapter would be a catastrophe. It turns out no. The other discovery which I'll be revealing is that it is optimal in a Maniac Mode LTC to Hammerne the first rescue staff 2 times. It turns out that the marginal value of extra warps is still quite low, so we can effectively accomplish with 4 rescue uses what we would otherwise do with 6 warp uses. In fact, one of those 6 warp uses would just go to waste. This run will opt for what I will call the double Hammerne Rescue route, and I will have notes in the description explaining how it stacks up to the double Hammerne Warp route. They both end up achieving the exact same final turn count in the end. We lured the Draconite with Lind to that exact spot so Marth could recruit Etzel and then kill him. Like Wendell, Etzel comes with D staves at base in a non-bishop class, meaning he is 8 staff uses away from hitting C staves as a bishop. He also has B anima, letting him use a certain tome we will obtain in the next chapter. However, we did not have any need for his services in this run. Militia finishes cutting through the desert and rescues Marth after he gets refreshed to visit the village to recruit Minerva. Minerva is a Draconite who comes with A Axis and the Uticlear, the A rank axe. She also brings us the Virgo Shard, which grants +2 resistance. Minerva recruits a couple of characters late in the game, and so is an EXP target on higher difficulties. However, since we will get the Warp Staff on this difficulty, we don't need to bother with her. Katria flies up and promotes. All of our physical combat stars barring Marth are now promoted with full access to 10 move classes. Julian gets us the boots. In FE3 Book 2 they granted +4 movement, but here they only grant +2. While the Warp Staff will reduce their usefulness somewhat, we will still definitely want to give them to Marth, since there are still a few chapters bounded by his walking speed. The final turn we will clean up. Monster Seals moving forward are mostly superfluous since our tight ship is generally done with promotions, although I'll actually break one out much later in the run. The reason we wanted Militia promoted for this chapter is to let her be the unit rescuing Marth to the top right, since she can quite easily Hammerne the rescue staff when handing it off to Minerva. We moved Chris on the previous turn in such a way that Minerva could hand the staff off to him, and he will give it to Katria, who will give it to Lind. Is Wendell's 3rd heal of the chapter and 8th heal overall, meaning he's done being trained. Lind rescues Marth and he will seize to complete chapter 9 in 4 turns. Julian will pick up the Capricorn Shard, which grants +2 magic. Chapter 10 is indoors, and we will finally be reunited with Merrick. The conceit of this map is that Merrick's rival Elrian has gotten it into his head that he should be in charge, and we need Wendell to go talk some sense into Elrian. In FE3 Book 2 there was no reclassing, and this was indoors, so you had to lure Elrian over so Wendell could reach him and talk to him, but we do live in a world with reclassing, so Wendell can just fly across as a Draconite, trivializing the map. Marth, of course, uses the boots. And this is probably Marth's de facto promotion in this run. Why there's a river flowing inside this building, I do not know, but this is a great opportunity to show off that several infantry classes can actually walk on rivers. Marth and Fina can as well, though the latter won't be doing that here. Both Merrick and Elrian can one-shot each other with a crit, and while Merrick can unequip his weapon, there's nothing we can do about Elrian unless we were to waste a rescue use on Merrick, or if we were to grab the Silence Staff, which is in one of the chests of this map. Silence in this game causes all magic to be sealed on both sides until the end of enemy phase, which is an interesting effect, but it doesn't end up being useful in this LTC. Another interesting staff in a chest here is the Unlock Staff, which permits opening doors at 1 to 2 range, but once more, the effect doesn't end up mattering at LTC pace. There are several enemies with anti-air equipment on the other side, but they're easy enough to pick off with our Draconite squad. There is an optional side objective on this map to leave all the enemy clerics alive, which will get us a silver card at the end of the chapter. Money isn't particularly tight, but we might as well get it. On higher difficulties, that silver card is replaced with a vulnerary. We have exactly one use of Thief that isn't set in stone, and we use it here to grab a large bullion. This is an okay use of Thief, but if we had saved it for a certain late game map, we could have avoided needing to train Wendell's staff rank. Merrick's Excalibur is similar to Lynn's Aura, being a B rank tome locked to male units that Merrick has special access to. Like Minerva, Merrick has one late game character recruitment that would necessitate training him on higher difficulties. We will feed him some filler EXP in a few places since I'm toffee. On turn 2, we will simply clean up everywhere and try to grab all the droppable items we can. Wendell will recruit Elrian, who brings us the Ares Shard, which grants +1 skill and +1 luck. Elrian will have one cameo appearance in Chapter 11. At the end of the chapter, we'll be joined by Dice and Malice, who both exist. That'll be Chapter 10 in 2 turns. It's bedtime time! Chapter 10x's gimmick is that there are 7 copies of the boss, and only one of them is the real one who ends the chapter on being killed. The real Roro is always one of the ones in the top row, and we can reach all but the center one on turn 1 with suitable arrangements. Since I have control over the RNG, I know which one will be the real one and do my preps accordingly. In this run, it's the one in the top right, and Luke with Fina's help can reach him. We have a new unit, Horus. He exists. Will be chapter 10x in 1 turn. At the end of the map, Jagan finds a mask and offers it to us. This isn't a piece of headgear unlike all the other customizations, so we'll be wearing it to the end of the game. Chapter 11 is the last desert chapter and sees the introduction of feral wyverns. They have 12 move and can fly. On Maniac mode and lower, like all dragons, they only have 1 range, but on higher difficulties, all dragons have 1 to 2 range. The only relief from the desert comes in the form of bone tiles, which are basically regular terrain spread across the entire map. As such, outside of Marth and Fina, every unit we deploy will either be a flyer or a magic user. We field Merrick and Elvrien just out of personal preference. The jobs they will be doing could be done just as well by Etzel and Wendell. Since the desert is so overwhelming, we'll be much better off by having a staff user rescue Marth to the gate in the top left. In FA3 Book 2, where the rescue staff was Yumina's PRF, you would 5-turn this map with 1 rescue use, relying on a big rescue boost with the help of enemies. You can do something similar in this game as well, but since we're doing the double Hammerne Rescue route, we can afford to go for the classic 4-turn with 2 rescue uses, where 1 rescue user rescues a second rescue user, with a second rescue user rescuing Marth. There is also a character recruitment for us to worry about. Sita can recruit Jake, who's at the top of the map. Fortunately for us, Sita can reach him in 4 turns without needing to be promoted, removing the need to train her, though we do have her chug a rainbow potion and give her an angelic robe. Literally, it is just sitting in her inventory to show off the trick I alluded to earlier in the run. This chapter sees Merrick go Dark Mage specifically for the extra defense just to simplify a later turn. Since Marth isn't charging to the gate himself, he has the chance to farm some EXP from the enemies to the left of our starting spot. This map has groups of hunters and barbarians who obviously aren't very mobile. As for the main path, we put Fina in the best starting spot so she could boost Lind forward. Lind will be our first rescue user in this strategy, and due to her lower defense will be the juiciest target for enemy wyverns. Sita used the Angelic Robe on turn 1 to create a staffing opportunity. Sita gets attacked by exactly one enemy who normally one-shots her at base. The Rainbow Potion and Angelic Robe let her just barely survive. I could have just had her dodge, but this lets me show off the turn 1 Angelic Robe to create a staff use trick. Merrick and Elrian are cameoing here to each kill one specific enemy and grab one of the desert items. There are a total of 10 desert items on this map, and in this clear we end up obtaining 7 of them, skipping the Elysian Whip, Lady Blade, and Goddess Icon. We position Luke and Lind to deal with as many of the wyverns on the left as they could, to ensure they don't get funny ideas on later turns. At level 9, Chris caps his defense on time for the next chapter. One good thing about dragon enemies is that they grant a lot of EXP. Fina is free to help Marth for the rest of the clear, so she helps Marth pick off a specific barb. Merrick can just narrowly skirt the range of the remaining enemies while still moving his full move towards the speed wings in the bottom left. Luke and Katria form up there to rescue boost Militia forward. Militia will be our second rescue user in this clear, and we gave her the Rainbow Potion and our defensive star shards to maximize her bulk and prevent her from being doubled by the wyverns. Elrian picks off the wyvern who attacks Sita, and now he can walk up north to reach the Draco shield in 2 turns. Sita parks herself just out of the enemy range there, and Chris flies up to deal with the upper group of enemies and the remaining wyvern there. On turn 3, Merrick marches into range of the bottom left wyvern. Luke mops up the remaining enemies in the left on enemy phase from that spot. Merrick reclassed to Dark Mage to survive this Wyvern's attack with 1 HP, one-shotting back with the Excalibur's effective damage. The enemies near the end of the map have a linked AI, which is why they didn't move to attack last turn. We'll simply clean up with Katria and Luke helping rescue boost Marth forward to complete chapter 11 in 4 turns. All that Jake does in this playthrough is visiting the nearby secret shop to buy us a dragon pike. From sand into fire. Chapter 12 sees us trudge through a volcano with plenty of forts along the way to slow us down. We once more deploy a lot of flyers, with Lind and Militia just here to pad out their EXP. Marth and Lind, in fact, grow several levels in this one chapter due to the nature of the clear. Sirius continues his flunky duties by being our 5th Draco Knight on this map. On turn 1, Fina dances for Chris, who flies all the way up north into a nest of enemies. This map has several reinforcement zones, but we don't really have the room to be cute about how we deal with them. Chris has 30 defense and is carrying the Cancer Shard to reach a crucial 32 defense benchmark. The reason for this is Daros. Daros is recruited by having Marth talk to him, but Marth also needs to be moving his full move to reach a particular tile by turn 3. This means we want Daros to move down exactly 3 tiles and attack Chris with a hand axe. The Silver Axe is naturally much stronger, but since his attack with it is 32, if Chris has 32 defense, both weapons do 0 damage to Chris, at which point Daros will randomly choose which weapon to use. Since dragons only have 1 range on Maniac mode, if you kept the dragon above Chris alive, then that would be one way to avoid needing to hit the 32 defense benchmark. But this method is much better since it lets us actually kill the enemies instead of having to worry about sparing them. We brought out Sirius so he can clear out those 3 wyverns with Pala and Catria. Venus' turn 2 dance goes to Marth to let him recruit dracos, and from that spot he can just barely reach the left fort at the top of the map on the next turn. Luke and Chris will go north with Marth. In turn 3, we're entering into another reinforcement zone, except the reinforcements include some feral wyverns we're not prepared to deal with, so we will actually block off the top forts. Turn 4, Luke heads off to the right, where we will obtain the last of the star shards, while Chris and Marth head left to the seize point. This activates another reinforcement zone, which we will block off the central forts to avoid, though the forts next to Lind will spawn in some juicy EXP bags for her. Seize Shard grants +1 defense and +1 resistance and completes our set. I didn't really say much about Darius himself, because what's there to say? He exists. At the end of this chapter, we'll be joined by 3 units, Belf, Leiden, and Robert, all of whom exist. Chapter 5 will simply clean up everywhere, and that'll be Chapter 12 in 5 turns. From fire, we head into ice. This time we have a map covered in rivers and ice dragons, and once more we have a recruitable unit to worry about. Beck starts off in the far left part of the map, and older runs would have Marth walk up to him and then walk to the seize point. But that all changed with Lapagnie 36's realization that this map has a special AI behavior. Once one of our units reaches the boss's island, all enemies on this map turn aggressive and start charging at us. This, combined with some careful baiting, lets us finish the map faster. This map also has several treasure chests, so we see the return of Rickard. We load him up with the Rainbow Potion and defensive Star Shards because we don't want Beck to see a clean kill on him for AI manipulation purposes. With all the rivers, we're once more incentivized to deploy a full complement of Draconites, with Sirius filling in to bait Beck. We put Julian in that starting spot to ensure he can walk onto the river turn 1, which is crucial to let him get to a certain treasure chest in time. Marth starts walking up to the boss area. Fina can dance Katria, and she can just barely make it onto the boss island. We keep Fina off to the right to ensure that Beck does not see her as reachable in fewer moves than Sirius. Activating the boss island AI also causes a number of reinforcements to spawn in. When examining long distances, the FE12 AI measures them in terms of number of moves it would take a unit to reach a spot, and it does not factor in 2 or 3 range into it. As such, Sirius is just barely outside of Beck's 3 move range, which is why we had to ensure Sirius was the most tempting target within 4 moves of Beck on turn 1, which causes him to move up and over the bridge, putting him on the spot to meeting Marth in a spot closer to the seize point. Ice dragons are pretty good at walking across the rivers here. In FE3 Book 2, Fire and Ice Dragons had elemental weaknesses which you could exploit with the corresponding Anima Magic Tomes, but that was removed in this game. Rickard was deployed to grab the Wormslayer. Fina's turn 2 dance gives Marth a few extra squares so he can get to a crucial river tile. Since there are some nasty wyverns bearing down on us, Linda and Chris move out to intercept them before they can reach someone like Fina, though Pala ends up distracting one of them. Sirius continues in his job as a bait unit by moving over there to ensure Beck will continue to move how we want him to. On turn 3, we can finish routing the entire map, barring Beck and one thief. Lind kills the Dragonpike thief. Chris moves over to that spot, so as to bait Beck directly below Marth. By moving his full move every single turn, Julian barely gets onto that river, letting him reach the Spirit Dust on turn 5. Marth recruits Beck, who exists. If Fina could reach Marth on this turn, she could have danced him to finish the map in 4 turns, but unfortunately Fina just cannot reach where Beck is standing under her own steam. On higher difficulties, you spend a rescue use here to get Fina further forward on turn 1 to save that turn on this map. We'll just clean up and that'll be chapter 13 in 5 turns. Dungeon Time Chapter 13X is a route and is one of only 2 Fog of War maps in the game. DSFE Fog of War mechanics were originally designed for F11's multiplayer. All units only have 2 tiles of vision, and on player phase, trace out vision along their entire movement path. We finally aren't on a terrain-dominated map, so we can reclass a couple of dracos to paladin to let them gain speed again. The Etzel clear is a well-known one from older LTCs. There is an IoT shield on this map, but we can't get it in this clear. At the start of this map, we're rejoined by Athena. All she'll do is kill one particular enemy on this map. We moved Chris in a specific way to expose the two enemy ballistae for Lind and Luke to pick off. Athena picks off that one barb who would threaten to go for Fina. Marth moves to the right to expose the boss's crew, including another ballista. Pala flies over to pick off the ballista, with Katria clearing the barb out of the way. Now, we just sit back and wait for everyone to die on enemy phase to complete chapter 13x in one turn. Chapter 14 is the next turning point in this run, since it's where the warp staff will show up. We don't strictly need to use it right away in the double Hammerne Rescue roar, but as you might imagine, when I do an LTC, I would like to show off all the new things I come up with, and the clear I'll be presenting today is something novel that I figured out with XS. For this clear we need a lot of 10 move units, so we will be deploying Minerva and Darrows. It is also the first clear where I make use of Lynn's access to C staves for warp, and Militia's B staves for again. On this chapter, Marth first needs to visit the glowing tile in the top center of the map to talk to Goto, and then he needs to go to the top right to recruit Tiki, and then finally the seize point is in the top left. Sirius, as usual, is the professional flunky, and he goes off to convoy warp the warp staff immediately. As for our other units, we want them to charge forward. Militia picks off the left ice dragon in that wall, and she also positions herself to enemy face a couple of dark mages. This opens the path for Marth to go and kill the right ice dragon. This is so that Fina can dance for him without losing squares. For this strategy, Fina absolutely must take the top right starting spot and needs to move her full move each turn. Katria, Pala, Luke, and Lind will pick up the remaining units in range to clear out the area. And Marth goes forward and will deal with several of the enemies far away while getting in range of his first objective, reaching the central glowing tile. You can see our first new unit here, Zane. Like in Shadow Dragon, Zane can turn into a copy of any one of our units. He will play a minor but important role in this run. On this map, he will copy Lind, the only unit he can reach turn 1 while moving forward. Unfortunately, he's one square too far behind to transform into a paladin and do one of their jobs. Darrows and Minerva are completely safe. They are never in range of any enemies in this clear, but their jobs do need promoted units since 9 move is not enough. We have some more notes about this chapter in the description, since there are surprisingly many different LTC strats for this map, depending on the number of staff uses that you can spare. Once Marth reaches the glowing tile, Goto takes away all of our star shards and replaces them with the star sphere, which grants a flat +2 boost to all non-HP combat stats, and also gives us the light sphere, which negates terrain bonuses and the effects of the dark sphere. On turn 2, Fina must dance for Lind, who had to start from the spot below Fina for this reason. Now, our 6 paladins come into play. We want to have Lind rescue Marth to the spot 2 to the right of her after moving her full move 3 times, since that puts him exactly in range of our next objective, talking to Tiki to recruit her. This requires a rescue boost, and we can't rely on enemies to help us, so we need to get 6 of our units to those spots, and we take advantage of the north wall to help set the rescue boost up. Zane's job is to block Fina off from the enemies on the left, who'll end up going for Militia instead. Militia started with the Thief Staff, so she could grab the Again Staff from the throne room. Since Marth talked to Goto, the game spawns in reinforcements from the back, and all the enemies on the map will start charging at us. On turn 3, we want to finish the map in one fell swoop. Our combat stars will clear out the congested corridor so Marth can reach Tiki. On higher difficulties, you would normally 4-turn this map with 1 rescue and 1 again, and that certainly would be one way to do things in the double Hammerne Rescue route. A 3-turn of this map is known that uses 3 warps and 1 again, and you can 2-turn this map with 4 warps and 1 again, which is how the double Hammerne Warp route would catch up as a matter of fact. What we will be pulling off here is a 3-turn with 1 warp, 1 rescue, and 1 again, which shows off how 1 rescue use can replace 2 warp uses on this map. There are several different staff permutations. Tiki exists. Militia will then break out the Again Staff to refresh Marth, letting him walk back down. This lets Fina just barely reach him, which is why Fina had to start in the best spot and not lose any squares. Lind will then warp him to Tease to complete chapter 14 in 3 turns. Using up a warp use here to save a turn will unfortunately cost us a turn later down the line, but I figured this would make my run more unique and interesting. At the end of the map, Zane will offer us a copy of Tiki's Tiara, which we take even though I think Wendell's hat looks better. Moving forward, the maps are going to be on the shorter end. Chapter 15 Seize Point is easy for a flyer to reach from the starting area, and with the warp staff it makes for a trivial half skip. However, we can do even better here by showing off the famous lunatic mode strategy. There is a path from the starting area to the Seize area that only has one sea tile, which means that Zane can walk onto it. As such, he can walk onto that tile and transform into a magic user, get danced, and then walk to the Seize area and rescue Marth to trivialize the map even on higher difficulties. Our other units just focus on gathering side objectives. There is one other place later in the run where I could show off replacing a warp use with a rescue use that would be novel, but due to the circumstances under which I was working on this run, I could not do that, and will merely have to note it when it comes up. That particular exchange of rescue for warp would specifically require us to preserve one use on the first rescue staff that we get. So we would have to forego one of the turn saves we achieved with it. And in exchange, we would be able to make that turn back later in the run. We break the first rescue staff at the same point where we would on higher difficulties, and that'll be chapter 15 in one turn. The new units on this map are Dolph, who exists, Abel, who exists, and Est, who exists. Chapter 16 is a short map that still has multiple side objectives. There is a thief carrying the geosphere we need to catch up to stay on track for the good ending, and a recruitable unit in the top left. The geosphere gives nearby allies a crit boost. There's also a treasure room and several droppable items. This will be Sirius's last hurrah. He will not do anything of consequence after this, since the number of physical combat units we need will start to drop off. We reclass George to Swordmaster for the extra point of movement. He needs to talk to Astrum to recruit him at last. Astrum exists. Honestly, his biggest contribution was before he joined in Chapter 7. Sirius heads off to chase down the two thieves running away. Katria will be in charge of luring Astrum closer, since his squad of heroes have a linked AI, while also taking the chance to farm more EXP. We're joined by Marcellin, who does do one small job on this map to let us grab an extra droppable item. Zane shows off another minor bit of utility he's capable of. Since he copies max HP but not current HP, he can consistently set up turn 1 staff targets. On turn 2, we open the throne room. We probably could have opened it turn 1 and just combat rigged to punch through the enemies, but I was starting to get lazy at this point in the run. Masellan's contribution is to kill the soldier in the way to let more units enter the throne room. We have to pass up most of the treasure room and just grab the rescue staff with the use of Thief. We didn't do this on turn 1 because that actually causes the boss to open the throne room himself. We'll just clean up to complete chapter 16 in 2 turns. See you next time!